Hi, folks, and if you are interested in being a better racer, I'm specifically talking to people who race primarily halves and fulls. Not everybody does that, but I find the majority of people are looking at the half distance and beyond. A way to do that is you need to run more 5Ks. Now, if you're running 5Ks all the time anyway, or the 5K happens to be your distance, then maybe this doesn't apply to you. But I find that a lot of people that tend to run mostly halves and fulls kind of shy away from the 5K, and I think that's a mistake. And I think in most cases, if you to run more 5Ks, you will become a better racer for the half marathon and the marathon distance. So why is that? There's a lot of reasons, but three main ones are, so 5Ks take minimum recovery. They do not take much out of you. You can get back into training very quickly. 5Ks teach you race control. You could also call that pace control, which is a big part of it, but it teaches you race control. And 5Ks are great for developing mental toughness, which is something that virtually everybody wants to have in their half marathon and their marathon. So let's look at the recovery. Now, this is a really wide ranges. It varies from person to person, but usually in a 5K, if I get this straight, you need 1 to 3 easier days and you're good to go again. A 10K is maybe 2 to 5 days. A half marathon can be anywhere between 3 days and 10 days before you're ready to rock again. And of course, a full marathon might be 2 to 3 weeks before you can really recover again. So the longer the distance, the more it takes. So again, if you're sprinkling some 5Ks into your training for the half marathon or marathon, it doesn't really interfere with your training for those events very much because the recovery on those is very quick. Now, I also mentioned about race control. I will tell you, when it comes to the 5K, pacing is king. And here's why. If you take off a little bit too fast, you're going to be toast at the end. You're not going to be able to hold the pace. You're going to die off at the end. So you can't take off too fast, which is, of course, a common problem in most races. On the other hand, if you take off too slow, then you can't pick up enough at the end. Now, if you take off a little bit too slow in a half marathon or marathon, you've got a lot of time to make that up. Not so much time in that. So when you're running 5Ks, you really start learning how to dial in the pace or that effort and what it feels like and get good control of the race. So I think 5Ks are great for developing your pacing skills and your racing strategy and helping you learn how to control the race. And then finally, I think 5Ks are fantastic for mental toughness. There's a graph I saw once. Down along the bottom is the miles, 1, 2, and 3 miles, and of course 0.1. And over on this side, perceived rate of exertion. And what happens is, in a 5K, your pace normally isn't going to vary very much mile to mile to mile, maybe 5 or 10 seconds at the most. So your effort is relatively unchanged, but the perceived rate of exertion just flies off the scale. And if you've ever done a 5K, and chances are you know that once you get into that second mile, it's like, holy cow, and by 3, you're redlining. It's like, this is hard. Well, it's not that the efforts actually increase because your pace is about the same. It's that perceived rate of exertion is so much higher. So learning how to deal with that stress and fight through that is going to be great practice when you get to the half marathon and the marathon. The pain, if you will, is not the same in the half and the marathon, but it's for a little bit longer period of time. For example, I find in a half marathon, it's those last 3 miles that you really have to slug through. In the marathon, it's those last 6 that you have to slug through. In the 5K, it's only 1 mile, but it's a higher rate of slugging. The final thing I'll say is if you're sprinkling more 5Ks into your training for the half marathon and marathon, avoid your last weeks of the training cycle. I guess the easy way to look at it is once you get into the kind of the taper period, I wouldn't be racing 5Ks then. Yeah, could you? Yes. But now it's kind of doing two things. It's conflicting a little bit with what the purpose of taper is. And secondly, even though you're not probably going to get injured, anytime you're doing any race, there's a risk of doing something. So I don't generally like to see racing happening during the taper period. But other than that, if you want to be a better racer, I suggest, if you're not already doing it, do more 5Ks.